Previous shiurim on this week's parsha are basically the same list as last week because it's Pekudei. So most of these shiurim I'm going to say now are about Pekudei. There was a shiur called Headless Angels from, I think, about 5 years ago. From 4 years ago, Nation United. From 3 years ago, From Pipe Dream to Reality. From 2 years ago, Windfall, which was a quadcopter story. And from last year, Under Heavy Fire. Okay, so before I talk about the parasha, which is Parashat Pekudei, I want to mention again about my daily MP3 emails that I send out. I'm mentioning it again because Baruch Hashem, every time I mention it, I get a few people telling me they want to subscribe. So it's good. It's good for me. So I send every day an email called Daily Halacha, which is one or two halachot by MP3 as an attachment to an email. And the same, I do a daily Musar email, which is like a 1 or 2 minute, very short idea, very much akin to what we discuss here in the shiur. If you want to subscribe, please send me an email. If you don't like it for any reason, you can unsubscribe. I'll try not to get upset, but of course I won't get upset. But send me an email, rabbikelati@gmail.com, rabbikelati@gmail.com. And also to mention again, I'm sorry to mention it again, but Canada, I think for the third week now I'm mentioning about Canada, haven't had much of a response. I think people think that unless they live in Canada, they're not able to help with supporting a trip to Canada for, so that we can speak in various mosdot like we did 2 years running. We did shiurim in America, so I want to see if we can do it in Canada. There are a few places available there. So anyone who wants to help, you can live in Canada, you can live in Timbuktu, you can live in the North Pole, the South Pole, anywhere. If you want to help, I'm sure there's something you can do to help us, whether it is organizational or just support or just rallying people or helping us with emails. Please, if you want to help in this great mitzvah of Harbatzat Torah, then you can send me an email again, rabbikelati@gmail.com, and you can get on the train and let's see if we can make it happen. If Hashem is maskim, then it will happen despite us. Okay, so this week's parasha, we said, Parashat Pekudei. It's all about the Mishkan, another parasha about the Mishkan. The Mishkan was so holy, it even trumped the two Batei Mikdash. The two Batei Mikdash were not as holy as the Mishkan. The Mishkan was only temporary, but yet it was so holy. You know why? Because the Mishkan, even though the Beit HaMikdash, the first Beit HaMikdash was built by Shlomo HaMelech, and the second Beit HaMikdash was not built by a king as such, but the Mishkan was built by Betzalel and Aholiav, and under the auspices, let's say, of Moshe Rabbeinu. So that's why the holiness in the Mishkan was, you can't even imagine how holy it was. So, seeing as we're talking about the Beit HaMikdash and we're talking about the Mishkan and the holiness of these holy places, I wanted to talk about David HaMelech a little bit. So, David HaMelech's greatest dream was to build a Beit HaMikdash. His whole life was focused on it. He wanted to build Ki Beiti Beit Elokim. He wanted to build the foundations, he wanted to build the middle, he wanted to build everything. Yet, he didn't get further than just building the foundations. The actual building was done by his son, Shlomo HaMelech. So, if David HaMelech invested so much effort, thought, planning, why was he not zocher? Why did he not merit? So they say, well, One answer is because his hands were filled with blood, because he was involved in war. He was involved in doing psak halacha for women. There were certain reasons why his hands were soiled with blood. They say that's why he couldn't build the Beit HaMikdash. But that sounds a little bit unfair, that he was doing mitzvot. He was doing milchemet mitzvah. Everything he did was a mitzvah. Yeah, so I mean, you have to take that away from him and give it to somebody else. So the Menachem Tzion says a very beautiful answer. He said it's not just that he didn't, his mitzvah was taken away. Look who it went to. It went to his son. So his bracha was that his whole life, his whole raison d'etre of his focus, everything he stood for was perpetuated by his son. That is the greatest nachat. I can't even think of how to translate the word nachat. Anyway, the greatest nachat for him was his son followed exactly in his footsteps. There's no greater bracha than that. So in effect, David HaMelech got the greatest bracha. Okay, you didn't build it, but look, your son is continuing exactly where you left off. This is the greatest bracha. And a person is never jealous about his children. They say there are two categories of people who you are never jealous of. One is your talmidim, your students, and one is your children. You're never jealous of your students. He knows more. Because it's like they're your progeny. It's more children are physical progeny. But students, you just get nachat. You get, okay. Somebody else will have to give a definition of nachat. I don't know how to, nachas. I don't know how to translate nachas. Anyway, that's what you get when you see your children on the right derech. That's what you see when your students follow in the right path. You get nachas. That's the only definition I can give. Okay, let's start with the parasha. Eile Pekudei HaMishkan. Mishkan Ha'idut asher pukad al pi Moshe avodat haLevim beyad Itamar ben Aaron HaKohen. The first verse in this week's parasha, chapter 38, verse 21, says, these are the reckonings, or the accountings, or the countings, for want of a better word, of the Mishkan, the tabernacle of testimony, which was reckoned. It was the Mishkan. It was the which was reckoned by Moshe Rabbeinu. So, what is all this about? Well, what countings? What reckonings? So, we're told. This is all talking about the Mishkan, in case you didn't guess. So, we're told that Moshe Rabbeinu gave what's the word? The right word? When you go into a house and you itemize everything in the house. Inventory. Thank you very much, Simon. That's why you're here. See, come up with that answer. It's worth you coming just for that. An inventory. Moshe Rabbeinu gave an inventory of every single part, every single bolt, every single screw, every single socket in the Mishkan. Thousands of pieces. Lahavdil. When you get something from IKEA, it comes with loads of little bits. Yeah, you always get bits left over at the end. You don't know where it goes. You just end up chucking it away. But you get so many little parts, screws, bits. He gave everything. Itemized, not one thing was missing. Everything was there. Why did he have to do that? He has to give an answer? And this is what he did for the Jewish people. Why did he have to do that? You know why? Because there were leitzanim within the Jewish people. What's leitzanim? What is a letz? A letz is somebody who mocks, who makes fun. He's a scoffer. What were these leitzanim doing? These people did not trust Moshe Rabbeinu. They thought, it's hard to imagine how anyone could think this of anybody, let alone Moshe. I mean, Moshe Rabbeinu, it's baffling. They said Moshe Rabbeinu was pocketing bits from the Mishkan. He lined his pockets. He was on the take. That's how we say in England. Yeah, he was taking some bakshish. You know, everything was made of gold and silver, and he was like whatever those bits, like the Havdil we said, like with IKEA, those bits left over. So he took a few. They won't miss a screw, they won't miss this socket, they won't miss the adanina, and then he put it in his pocket. So he made an accounting for every little thing. Nothing was missing. These people had egg on their faces, accusing Moshe Rabbeinu. But let's look at this a little bit in a deeper way, because why did they think Moshe Rabbeinu was on the take? Because Moshe Rabbeinu was the one, when everybody was told by Kadosh Baruch Hu, go and take the gold, please go and take the gold and silver when you leave Egypt. They had to be told, nah was the word, nah means please, go and take. They said, no problem, we're very happy to take. They came, they rinsed Egypt of all the riches. They rinsed the place. And again, by the Dead Sea, when they crossed the sea, the Egyptians drowned. They had all the riches with them. Again, the Jewish people got that as well. What was Moshe Rabbeinu doing? He went to take the Atzmot Yosef. He took the bones of Joseph. He never took any money. So he came. He was the worst off in terms of money. Everyone else became rich. He didn't take a thing with him. And then suddenly, now they see Moshe Rabbeinu he's got money. He did actually. He did. He became rich at one point, almost overnight. You know why? Because when he broke the tablets are made of like a very, very precious stone, sapphire. So all the little shivarim, all the little shivrei, the leftover shards of the luchot, he gathered them up. He was told, gather them up, and that's for you. And he became like a multi-millionaire from these valuable pieces of stone. But the people didn't know that. So they just assumed that Moshe Rabbeinu was sketching everybody, was taking money from people, or he was taking from the Mishkan rather. So you can turn around and say, look, you know, these people, they didn't know that Moshe Rabbeinu took the little broken pieces of the luchot, the tiny little pieces. Could they be blamed? So much. Okay, call them people who they made a mistake. Call them the to'im. Why you call them leitzanim? Call them people who made a mistake. But you call them leitzanim. It's very strong. It sounds like people people who mock or people who don't believe. They think they know better. So they come and they make fun and they say, the rabbis are like this, and they've always got some answer, some silly, what's the word? Like a false hashkafa, a krum hashkafa, they say in Yiddish. It's like a twisted logic that they apply to the tzaddikim. If you call somebody late salim, it's a very serious accusation. So why so serious? You know what? And that's because how would they have known that Moshe Rabbeinu took all the little bits from the broken luchot? How were they to know? So they just made an assumption. They said, look, what's happening? Moshe Rabbeinu has now become rich overnight? Okay. So the answer is in the first instance that they got, they decided Moshe Rabbeinu was a thief. They didn't turn around and say, oh look, Moshe Rabbeinu's become rich. Why did he become rich? Oh, Hashem must have given him something. He must have got a donation. Somebody must have looked after him. Yeah, they didn't start making all sorts of limud zechut, like judging him favorably. Straight away, he's a thief. No judging favorably, nothing. That's what you think? You shouldn't think like that about even the poorest, simplest person. You're supposed to judge him favorably. But Moshe Rabbeinu, the tzaddik par excellence, Hashem's chosen one. Hashem doesn't choose any person to come and get the luchot in Shemaim. Hashem doesn't choose any person to come and take the Jews out of Egypt. Hashem chose Moshe Rabbeinu for a reason. He was the greatest Navi that ever lived. There's no question. He was the Manig of Klal Yisrael. That's what you think about him? You lower him to a level where he's a common thief? Of course, that demands the greatest punishment from Hashem. So of course they were called Leit Salim. This is not the way to behave. But our job is to judge favorably, especially when we're talking about tzaddikim. You know, it's so easy these days to judge people badly. You know, you have somebody who is a tzaddik or a rav or a posek or something, and either in your mind or maybe something that's going around, some rumors going around, straight away we want to believe the rumor. We want to believe what we see with our eyes. We don't say, oh, you know what? Even if he did do a sin, yeah? Well, first of all, we should say, look, it can't be that he did such a thing. He's a tzaddik. How could he do it? We have to judge him favorably, make all sorts of scenarios and excuses to explain it away. No, he can't be like that. And even if he did sin, we have to say, there's no way he would let one day go by without doing teshuvah. Even if he did in the worst case scenario that he did a sin, he would do teshuvah. There's no question. Suddenly we start judging them unfavorably. We say, oh, look at that Rosh Hashiva, he's like this, he's like that, all sorts of accusations. You know, we're talking about Klei Kodesh, holy people, and we write them off, chick-chack like that. One little rumor, suddenly they become... Now, look, it's a terrible thing to do, but I would hesitate to say that the thought process that goes through a person's mind is that, look, here's a very holy person. I expect better from him. That's why we think of all these, that's why we think badly. And we think, well, look, he should know better. Okay, but you're not supposed to believe that they even got to that level. You're supposed to judge them favorably. That's tzaddikim. So this is a lesson. You see, even Moshe Rabbeinu was not immune from this type of libel, this type of chitter-chatter, which destroys people. And of course, Moshe Rabbeinu, it's not enough. Moshe Rabbeinu just says, you know what? Leave them. They want to make fun of me? That's their business. I know I'm honest. Hashem knows I'm honest. That wasn't good enough for Moshe Rabbeinu. Because you have to clear your name. Even if you know 100% there's nothing wrong, you have to clear your name. Your name in public has to be Zahav Mipazrav. Has to be the greatest. There has to be no chashad, no suspicion of what you do. Even if you know 100% you're right. Because public opinion is very, very strong. And it can go against you. Tov Shem Mishemen Tov. A good name is better than good oil. Because that's what's going to stay with you. That's what's you're going to leave behind. You're going to leave behind your name, your reputation. If your reputation is no good, even if it's got nothing to do with you, still you have an obligation to clear your name. Moshe Rabbeinu, of course, there was no question. He didn't have to do all this. Why did he do it? He wanted to clear his name. He didn't want one person to have one doubt in the back of his mind, subconsciously, that he already buried in the recesses of his brain. Nothing, not a shade. Put it all in writing. Here's the Pekudei, here's the accounting, and finished. Yeah? Now.
So how did he clear his name then?
Because he gave an accounting. He showed every single thing that went in the Mishkan. Here, this is what was brought. This is what went into the Mishkan. He compared. You can see it like for like. You know, lahavdil, like a balance sheet. You have an accountant has a balance sheet. He says, look, this is what the income, and this is the profit, this is the loss. Everything is on paper, you can see. No, this is beyond question now. So he must have gone to a very great trouble to give an account. You know how big the Mishkan was, how intricate it was? What he had to do that? It's baffling. But he wanted to clear his name. So, a sign of a true Yirat Shamayim, a person who fears heaven, is to care for every little detail about other people's money. Because this was a communal project. Everybody donated to the Mishkan. So this is everybody's money. So he even gave an account for every single thing. because this was other people's money as well. Now, I'll tell you a beautiful story now about the Alter of Novardok. The Rebbe of Novardok was impeccably honest. So the story is told of him that, he used to go around collecting. Many Gedolim used to go collecting. I by the way, just incidentally, I heard, when Rav Yosef Kahneman, the Ponovitch Rosh Yeshiva, when he was building Ponovitch in Israel, he would point at the bricks and he would say, look, this brick is Keneged, this brick is in place of a Rambam that I could have explained. I could have given a fantastic answer to a Rambam or a She'ilah or a Terutz or whatever. Instead, I spent my time with these bricks. Yeah? So he knew that if he didn't build the yeshiva, he could have been learning and giving chidushim, expounding Torah, having students. Yeah, but he spent his time, he wanted to build the yeshiva. He could have been so much greater, as it were. But he gave his time because he wanted to build. That was his job. That was what he had to do. So he would, every brick he knew, this is in place of me giving a chidush in this area and that area. L'dugma, for example. So, the Alter of Novardok, he was collecting. So he was collecting, he went to a certain place, I think it was in Moscow, and it was Erev Shabbat, and there was another Jew there. He looked like a prominent Jew, and the Alter of Novardok wanted to clean his suit before Shabbat. It's a very beautiful idea. You clean your shoes, you clean your suit before Shabbat. It's L'chavot Shabbat. It's a beautiful thing. Don't think, it's a dirty thing, I have to scrape mud off my shoes. And then, if you do it for Shabbat, it's like offering korbanot in the Beit HaMikdash. Literally. Like, I can say I'm not going to get through the story very quickly. I'm just remembering now, I was discussing with my kids about how Rav Eliashiv's wife used to wake up something like 1 hour before her husband. Her husband used to wake up at 2 in the morning, 2:30 in the morning. She used to wake up before that to make him a coffee. Not a coffee you put granules in a cup and hot water and chalas. She used to make proper old school ground coffee, the old school way. Yeah? And she used to take a time over it. So my kids couldn't understand. They said, Daddy, how come? Because the story is told that she was offered a coffee percolator, which would save time. Her own children said, look, don't wake up an hour before. Take this coffee percolator, make the thing chick-chack. She didn't want to do it. She goes, this is my reward. I'm spending so much time. I'm giving the Rebbe, she called her husband the Rebbe, I'm giving the Rebbe I'm assisting him to get up in the morning, giving him his coffee, and when he drinks his coffee, it gives him energy to get up. You want to take that away from me? You want to make me do it chick-chack? My kids couldn't understand. They said, look, let us save her time. So Hashem put the following thought in my head. I said, Rav Eliashiv, his wife, would never be able to serve in the Beit HaMikdash. She's a woman. If Mashiach came, what do you think she could do? She could go in the Beit HaMikdash? Yeah? She'd be in the Ezrat Nashim, in the women's Chatzer. But when she woke up an hour before her husband had made her coffee, she was like the Kohen Gadol serving in the Beit HaMikdash, in the Kodesh Kodashim. That's what she was like. That's the nearest she would have got, and that's what she was doing. Because she put effort, grinding the coffee, boiling the water, not chick-chack in the kettle, in the electric kettle. She put time and effort into it. She was literally doing the avoda in the Beit HaMikdash. So who wants to take that away from her? Go get a microwave. What is that? Will you take that zuchut away from her? No. That was my answer. Then my kids had another answer on top of that as well, but I won't go into that. Otherwise we'll never get to the stories. Anyway, so the Alter of Novardok, he was staying in this a hotel, Erev Shabbat. He saw this prominent Jew and he said to the Jew, look, I need to clean my suit. Do you have a brush or something? He goes, of course, Rebbe, I have a brush. So he takes the brush and he gives it, and he has this brush and he's brushing his suit. very carefully. Meanwhile, he was in a rush to go to shul or something, and he said, okay, you know what, I can't see the other Jew now who I borrowed the brush from. I'll go to shul, maybe when I come back, Motzei Shabbat, I'll give him the brush. So he came back Motzei Shabbat. You know, Rebbes, they don't come back chick-chack straight after Shabbat. He spends time, he has a, you know, Havdalah probably took an hour. So he came back. By the time he came back, the Jew who lent the Rebbe the brush had left the hotel already. So now there's the Alter of the Vardok holding somebody else's brush, and he never knew, probably never even knew, maybe knew the name of the fellow, but where's he going to find him? There's millions of people in Russia. So what did he do? He said, you know what, I'm going to hold on to this brush. I'm not going to do anything with it. You know, there's a concept of Yeush, of despair. The fellow would probably have despaired of it. He thought, oh, you know what, the Rebbe had got my brush. Never mind. Gesundheit, let him keep the brush. No, it was not good enough for the Rebbe. Maybe he had an attachment to this brush, so he kept hold of the brush. For 7 years he was holding on, carrying it with him all the time. 7 years, can you imagine that? Until 7 years later he was in a train with somebody who was from Moscow. And he said to him, oh, you're from Moscow, do you know so-and-so? And he must have remembered his name. The fellow said, yes, I know him quite well. He goes, Baruch Hashem. He gave him the brush. Give the fellow back his brush. Can you imagine such a thing? You wouldn't carry a brush out there for 7 minutes. You'd probably put it in the bin. Maybe not put it in the bin, but you would say, look, never mind. So what? Give it to the Gemach. Not good enough. These people, these holy people got their inspiration from Moshe Rabbeinu. Not one thing was left unaccounted. So important it is. It's a sign of true Yirat Shamayim. So let's move forward. We're going to go to the 40th chapter. I'll tell you something interesting about something, a possible you could even just blink and you'll miss it. Look at this beautiful lesson that comes out here. Chapter 40, verse 10. We'll start with that. It says that where is it? Mem 10, here we go. Yeah, it's talking about Moshe Rabbeinu doing what Hashem had told him. Yeah, Moshe did what Hashem had told him. And now let's go to Pasuk 20. It's probably better you see it here. So 40 verse 20. Chaf. ויקח ויתן את העדות אל אהרון ועשם את הבגדים על אהרון ויתן את הכל על אהרון מלמעלה. 1 minute. No, it's not here. Oh, it's the next one. 21. So 40 verse 21. ויבא את הארון אל המשכן וישם את הפרוכת המסך ויסך על ארון העדות כאשר ציווה אדוני את משה. This is talking about Moshe Rabbeinu. It said Moshe did, and it goes through the list of what Moshe did. And at the end of it, just as Hashem commanded Moses. That doesn't make sense. Moses is saying this, Moses did this, and he did this, just as God commanded Moses. It goes from the second person to the third person. That doesn't make sense. It's not like I did, or he did what he was told, just as I did what I was told, just like Mashiach was told to do. You would say, just like I was told to do. What does it mean? You know, Moshe Rabbeinu did just like God commanded Moses. That doesn't make sense. You should say just as God commanded him. So why the change from second person to third person? So the answer is that a person must almost act like he has a split personality. There is his public persona, his public perception, and there is him himself. Like a person has to see himself as detached from his public position. His public position could be very exalted. Nobody was more exalted than Moshe Rabbeinu. A person could be a very well respected. He could be a rabbi. He could be a doctor. He could be a lawyer, anything. Yeah, he has a certain public image, and people look up to him. Now he almost has to step away from himself as the public image and say, look, that's what people think of me, but that's not me. People think of me as great and this and that. Yeah, but that's just what they think of me. That's not, me. I mustn't believe that hype. I mustn't believe that, because it's just going to go to my head. So a person has to walk away. He has to say, you know what? I did what I had to do. But that was what Hashem commanded Moshe. That was what Moshe Rabbeinu had to do. But Moshe Rabbeinu, the person, steps away and he says, look, that's not me. That's what people think of me. And maybe I'm not explaining myself. It's like, I'll tell you what I understood from this. Very often when we refer to our Rabbanim, our Chachamim, or somebody we look up to, we often refer to them in the third person. We go up to a Rav who says, does Rebbe want a cup of tea? We don't say, do you want a cup of tea? Why do we do that? Why don't we say, do you want me to help you? Instead we say, does the Rav or does the Gadol Ador want me to help you? Who are you talking to? You're looking at the person, you're talking to him in the third person. You ever wondered why people do that? You can turn around and say, because you want to say you, like you're talking like a commoner. Okay, fine, that's fair enough. But I think there's something deeper there. I think we're addressing their public perception because they themselves negate their public perception. Like, let's give an example. I've said this before. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, when he was at the Agudat Israel convention and they introduced him, they said, and now we have to speak for us the Gadol Ador, the Admor, Shlita, Kavod Harav, Rabbeinu, Morenu, everything, all the platitudes, meanwhile, because this was being filmed, meanwhile the camera is filming Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach while they're telling him all these names and everything. And he's wincing, no, like this, like that. He doesn't want to hear it. Why? Now, were they at fault? Of course not. Can you imagine if the speaker who was announcing him would have turned around and said, oh, you know what, you're right. Okay, go off and speak, Rabbi. Of course he would never have done that. Why? Because he's addressing the public persona of the Gadol Ador. He's talking with reverence because to know kavod Torah, you give kavod for Torah. But from Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach's perspective, that's not me. That's just who I represent. That's not me. I'm just Shlomo Zalman. If I could ever say such a thing. I'm talking about how he would think. I would never talk about Harav HaGaon Rav Shlomo Zalman in such terms. I'm just saying how he would have thought, I'm just Shlomo Zalman. That's what he would have said. And they're talking about who is this? It's almost like he's playing himself. He's acting himself. You understand? I think that's why we talk about the Rabbanim. We always talk to them in the third person. Because we're appealing to their public persona. Because they don't regard themselves like that. And we don't want to, force the issue. We'd say, this is only my theory. I could be wrong. But we say, look, okay, you don't consider yourself this public perception. But I'm addressing the public perception. That's how I view you. So it's like, that's the dynamic at play here. So that's why Moshe Rabbeinu did as Hashem commanded Moshe Rabbeinu. Hashem commanded the Gadol Ador, the Manig, the leader of Klal Israel. But Moshe Rabbeinu removed himself from that public perception. For him, as far as he was concerned, he was just Moshe. He was just Moshe. He wasn't Moshe Rabbeinu, he was just Moshe. That's what he considered himself. Okay, so now let me tell you a story about Rav Gifter. If I can find the story, I had it written down here, but this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful story. Well, maybe not beautiful, but it's a very nice story. It's a very short story. The Rav Gifter, who was the Rav of Telz, the Telz of Rosh Hashiva, He went to Mexico to collect money. Again, we're talking about Rabbanim who go collecting money. Rav Gifter was no different. He used to go anywhere to collect for his yeshiva. So he saw a person who was very rich. And these people are very rich, of course. How did they get rich? They're in business. This fellow was no different. He was in business. And, very often these people are so busy they can't even give you the time of day. Yeah, for all their best intentions, it's always impossible to get an appointment with them. They're so involved in their business life. So Rav Gifter was forced to get an appointment very early in the morning, before the business day had started. The crack of dawn. So now Rav Gifter turns up, and the man, even at that early time in the morning, he says, K'vod Rav, I'm really sorry, I just don't have the time now. We're going to have to cancel the meeting. After Rav Gifter had really turned up. Now, of course, the fellow didn't just dismiss him. Didn't just dismiss the Rav. He said it in a way with kavod. But he had no choice as far as he was concerned. In the middle of a business meeting, even at that time of the morning, he couldn't speak. Rav Gifter said, "Look, no, I'm not talking about money now. I just want to have one question answered by you. Let me just ask the question, and then you won't hear from me." He said, this is not the first time I tried to get a meeting with you. I actually went to your house first. And when I got to your house, I wasn't able to get you there, but I saw what a beautiful house. So many bedrooms, such a huge, rolling garden, like a beautiful mansion. It's unbelievable. And yet, all your time, it seems like you're spending here in your office, on your phone, or with your clients, doing business deals. The question I want to ask you is like this. When will you ever find the time, or when do you ever find the time to enjoy and relax in your house if you're here all the time? So now this fellow didn't understand the question. He said, well, what do you mean? I bought this house. So what if I don't spend time in the house? The house is for me and my family, not just for me. If my family's there, then they can enjoy the house. But for me, it's more important for me to make the money for them. My life is spent making the money to buy the house, to maintain the house, to maintain my family to a reasonable standard that would befit them. But my life is just making money. And he said in Yiddish, I'll have to read it here because I certainly will remember this. Od mir wollen matzliach sein, braucht men liegen in Geschäft. If somebody wants to be successful in business, he has to be shakua, has to be totally immersed in what he's doing. He can't do it wishy-washy. Of course, there's something to be said about that. You want to do something properly, you apply yourself to it. Yeah, in Hebrew, as I said, we say shakua. You have to be immersed. You have to give yourself completely. Rav Gifter said, you've answered my question, that's all I want from you. You don't have to give me any money. I'm happy now. Why? Because you told me if you want to succeed, you have to be totally immersed. My business is Torah. If I want to be successful in Torah, I have to be totally and utterly immersed. That's all I wanted to hear. You hear that? There's a difference. They had something very, very much in common, but there was a difference. What did they have in common? Rav Gifter and this businessman, whatever they did it 100%. It happened, the businessman was for his reason, and Rav Gifter, he had his reason. But they both were, but somebody goes through life. I tell you what comes out, to my mind from this story, is you don't get anywhere in life if you're going to do something half-heartedly. If you're going to do it right. Like that old 80s song, yeah? If you're going to do it right. So, to do something wishy-washy, you're never going to succeed. If you're going to make money, you can be a businessman. You can do it l'shem shamayim. Of course, I'm going to tell you now a beautiful vort before I finish with my final story for today. I'll tell you how a person can do business l'shem shamayim. Of course, but if you're going to do it properly. Perhaps do it properly, maybe for less time. Maybe the time that you spend there, you can limit it. Yeah, you can put yourself into it, limit it, because at the end of the day, you must leave time for Torah. There's no question. You can't, it's not an all-consuming business. Yeah, to do, because what comes out of working is at the end of the day, you're right. You give tzedakah. You support your family, but it mustn't consume your entire life, because there's more to life than that. Yeah, you can do whatever you do in whatever time is allotted. I always say this. I learn with somebody, and he's a very diligent person, but sometimes he slips up. Sometimes he doesn't come for chavruta. Sometimes he has to leave early, and he doesn't make up the time. Once in a while he does that. And I pull him up about it because I'm very friendly with him, and he can take it. Yeah, because I normally say it in a funny way, a light-hearted way. But I tell him like this. I said, look, Hashem is not going to pull you up when you're learning Torah. He's not going to say, stop wasting time learning Torah. That definitely is not going to happen. That's one. Unless there's something that he really should be doing that's like of critical importance that he could push off the learning for. Maybe that's to be discussed. But I'm saying, if you're learning Torah, that's what Hashem wants you to do. Even if you're helping your family, and that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. That's like, what's it like what you have to do? That's what the time demands. Hashem's not going to pull you up about that. You're helping your wife. You're helping your kids. Hashem's not going to pull. He's going to pull you up the time when you're sitting in front of YouTube and watching it for half an hour, 1 hour. Yeah, and you say, "Oh, I'm relaxing now. That's relaxing." Yeah, that's how you relax. You know how you relax? Pull up a Gemara, learn a Tosfot. Yeah, if you can't learn a Tosfot, learn a Mishnah. Go read a Rebbe Shemaisa. Read a story about Rabbanim. Go. Read Hamadir, the kosher bit, that is, not the news. Yeah, who says you have to watch the computer for 1 hour? That's your relaxing. That's what you're going to be pulled up. Not because I'm not learning Torah because I'm going to help my wife. You help your wife. That's l'shem shamayim. It's the other bits and pieces during the day. Yeah, the 5 minutes here, the half an hour there. You're wasting time. That's when you're going to get punished. Don't say it to him like that, chas v'chalila. But I'm telling it to you because I'm not telling it to you. I'm just speaking to myself, and if whoever wants to hear can hear. But the point is there's a culpability only for certain things which you can't. You don't have an answer for it. How can you answer for that? You're wasting time like that. How can you give an answer for that? Where's your l'shem shamayim? But there is l'shem shamayim if you're cleaning the house for Shabbat, of course. No question, it's avodat hakodesh. We discussed that earlier. And if you're babysitting the kids, when you're playing with your children, you're taking them to the park, yeah, or you're flying drones like I do, that's also l'shem shamayim. Even though I'm speaking about myself, it's also l'shem shamayim. You're spending valuable time with your kids. Your kids see that, my father doesn't just lock himself away and he doesn't spend any time with us. Of course he spends time with us. When he has time, he spends time with us. That's what they see. That's your avodah in the Beit HaMikdash. That's your avodat HaKodesh. But all the other bits, that there's no answer for that. What are you going to say for that? That's what I'm trying to say. So now let me talk to you. We talked about business Shem Shemaim. Very quickly, this is my last point now before we finish with a nice story. So chapter 40, verse 22. ויתן את השולחן באור מועד על ירך המשכן צפונה מחוץ לפרוכת. So the shulchan, the table, was put in the Oel Moed outside of the Mishkan. Tzafona. What does tzafon mean? Tzafon means? In the north. Now, the menorah was put on the south. Yeah, Darom. So, you've got the Mishkan, you have the Shulchan on the north, the menorah on the south. We know that the Shulchan represents Parnassah. The menorah represents wisdom, which is Torah. So you want Parnassah, you go to the north. You turn to the north. You want wisdom, Torah, you turn to the south. That's how it is. So that's why it says in the Torah that the Shulchan was in the north, Parnassah. If you want Parnassah, you go to the north. And the menorah, the Torah, was to the south. So you have two choices, either Parnassah or Torah, yeah, which is the two main things that we should be occupied with in this world. Now, that's all very nice, we say, so it sounds like they're in the right position. But you know when they were in the north and when they were in the south? You know when it was to your left and to your right? Only when you walked away out of the Mishkan were they positioned in the correct way. But when you walked in, they were opposite. So in other words, as it were, to your north and to your south, the Shulchan was in the south and the menorah was in the north. So it was like opposite. Whereas if you look forward and you see, when you look forward, north, east, south, west, never eat shredded wheat. That's right, north is in the front, never eat shredded, and south is behind you. Yeah? So you have, north and south are opposite each other. So the directions were switched when you walked into the Mishkan. But when you walked out, they were in the correct way. So I hope I'm making myself clear. What does this show? The Beit HaLevi gives the following answer. When you walk into the Mishkan, again, when you walk into the Mishkan, you're approaching the Shekhinah. The Mishkan is the Shekhinah. That's where Hashem's holy presence resides. When you go into the Mishkan, things are mixed up. You're approaching spirituality. The Torah is the wrong way around. The Parnassah is the wrong way around. What does it mean the Torah is the wrong way around? It means when you approach spirituality, here's the point that Beit HaLevi brings. When you approach spirituality, sometimes the Torah can be on the wrong way around, meaning that a person may not start off his journey to spirituality with the correct motives. He may be learning Torah not for the right reason. Maybe because somebody's telling me I have to, maybe because I'm doing it for payment, like his grandfather is saying, look, I'll give you $5 a day if you learn Gemara. Yeah? It's not the ideal, the best way, but you know something? Mitoch shelo lishma ba lishma. Do it anyway. Even if it's not the ideal, the best way of doing it, do it anyway. Why? Because it may not be the right reason, but because of the hergel, because of the consistency of it, you will come to do it in the right way. The main thing is you should be exposed to the Torah. That's what has to come out here. Okay, you haven't got the holy thoughts of the Vilna Gaon or the Ben Ish Chai. Okay, that's for another time. Just start. Don't worry about, kavanot and the best intentions and everything for the sake of heaven. Don't worry about that, no. And now, get stuck into the Gemara. That's what we have to do. So when you're walking towards the Mishkan, maybe the Torah's on the wrong place. Instead of being in the south, it's in the north. Don't worry about that. Just go. Now what happens now when you leave spirituality? What happens when you leave the environment of the yeshiva or the kollel? And now you have to go out into the big wide world. You have to make a parnassah. Now when you come out, you're going towards parnassah. Oh, parnassah. Can I also do parnassah? Not Nishem Shemaim? No way. Your parnassah has to be mamash L'shem shamayim. You cannot go and earn a living and say, I'm doing it just for myself. You have to have a good reason to be able to devote your hours into earning money. Why? I'm doing it so I can support my family. Fantastic reason, very good reason. I'm doing it so I can support Mosdot. I want to give 10% to charities. I have to work. I can't give 10% of nothing. If I'm not working, I've got no money. So if these are your motivations, that's called working l'shem shamayim. But can a person work and say, I'm working because I really want a Maserati? No other reason. I couldn't care less about my family. They can all work themselves. Me, I'm working. I already got a house. I want a Maserati. That's why I'm working all these hours. Or I want a house in Bishop's Avenue or Willington Road. Yeah, that's what it. That's l'shem shamayim. That's not l'shem shamayim. So a person. So what comes out of here? All this, what I just said. The Torah can be learned not l'shem shamayim. It's the one thing you can learn with ulterior motives. Because it's so holy, you should do it anyway. But parnasah, you have to have a reason why you're spending so much time in parnasah. Yeah? Have those intentions in mind. When I work, when I do my 9-to-5 job, I'm doing it to put food on the table for my family, for myself. I'm doing it to pay the mortgage. I'm doing it to pay the school fees. People forget about that sometimes. People think schools pay for themselves. Yeah, I can't tell you how many tzarot our school has faced since its inception. My wife is chair of governors of a school in northwest London. Every day there's a different story. They've got to pay for this, they've got to pay that, and there's so much money. It's how on earth do they survive without Siyata Dishmaya? Yeah, people have to pay their school fees. Some it's very hard for people. Yeah, but you must have the commitment. You must have the commitment. If you can't do it physically, that's one thing. But the one thing that everybody can do is to commit themselves to making those payments. Yeah, you might not be able to do it month on month as much as you can, but commit. Just say, you know what, I'm making this my focus to pay what I pledged to pay. It's so important. We have to have that in mind. So, of course, when you're earning a parasah, you must have these things in mind. I'm doing it to pay my school fees, to put food on the table, to support my children. They should go to a Jewish school. They should grow up to be mentioned. My daughters should be Benot Israel. Should be each one should be an Eshet Chayil. My son, each one should be a Ben Torah. Should have Midot Tovot before everything. To have Derech Eretz. I need to teach you. I need help with that. I can't do that from nothing. So of course, a person have to have something. You can't do it without being nishma. Now, I'm going to finish off. How am I doing for time? Okay, I just about squeezed the story in. Every week, I don't know how I do it. I keep thinking, I can only speak for 10 minutes today. I come up with Hashem puts these extra stuff in my head. That's not in my notes. Baruch Hashem has to be for a reason. So, we talked right in the beginning of the shiur about how Moshe Rabbeinu, although he knew he was honest, and of course, Hashem knew he was honest. There was no doubt about that. That didn't matter as far as Moshe Rabbeinu was concerned. He wanted to show the public, he wanted to show every Jewish person there that he was above suspicion. Simple as that. Yeah, it's not good enough him in his own head, and Hashem knows it as not good enough. Listen to this beautiful story about how a person is so careful that his good name gets preserved in this world. So there was a Rav in Israel. His name was Rav Shlomo Zalman Porush. Now Rav Porush, I think this story takes place in Russia. Yeah, in Minsk in Russia. He used to collect money for the poor people in Eretz Israel. You can't get a bigger mitzvah than that. People who were on the bread line. And he was in charge of distributing this money to the poor people of Eretz Israel. Now what happened? It would all get put into one check, and that check would arrive before Pesach, and then people would have money for Pesach. Kimcha de Pischa. So now, what happened in those days? The postal system wasn't like what it is today. Actually, might even have been better. But anyway, as it happens, and they couldn't, of course, pay online. So as it happens, the check came after Pesach, and it was very difficult for people. People have to take loans and this and that. So Rav Shlomo Zalman now, what could he do? He had to borrow an amount of money from somebody and use that against the money, the check that was coming. So he had to take, it was basically, I'm having there's a word for it, like a bridging loan, they call it, a bridging loan. Yeah, in other words, I've got the money coming to me, it's coming in a few weeks' time. Can you lend me money against the check that's going to come in a few weeks' time? People do that these days. They borrow against their wages. People they want drinking money. They can't wait till the end of the month to get the salary. They want drinking money. They want to go and enjoy the weekend. What do? They go to these places. They borrow money and have to pay back with their wages plus all the interest. Lahavdil. This is Lahavdil Elef of Avdalot. We're talking about money of Kedusha here. So Rav Shlomo Zalman Porush had to borrow 200 gold coins, which is a huge amount of money, from somebody called Rav Feivel Stoller. And he said to Rav Feivel, I will pay you back these 200 gold coins after Pesach. When I get the check, you will get the money straight away, no problem. What happened? Straight after Yom Tov, he managed to pay 110 of the gold coins. And he said, look, I owe you 90 more coins. Can I have a little bit of time to pay that? He said, yes. So it happened that it was 2 months after Pesach, 2 months later, that he came, Rav Shlomo Zalman came and he bought the remaining 90 gold coins. He gave back to Rav Feivel Stoller. So that should have been the end of the story. Yeah? 200 coins owed, 110 was paid, plus 90. Khalas, that's it. You should have gone home, you should have shook hands, and that's it. However, Rav Feivel Stoller must have been maybe a little aged at that time, and he did not remember that he had been already paid 110 gold coins. So as far as he was concerned, there was a huge amount of money owing. Now what happened? What else could they do? They had to go to Beit Din. So what did they do? Rav Shlomo Zalman was being accused of not paying his 110 coins, which he knew he had paid. So they said to Rav Shlomo Zalman, look, you need to make a shivu'ah, you need to make a promise, and not just a promise, an oath. An oath is made, you put your hand on, I think it's on a Sefer Torah, and you have to say, I think you have to say it with Hashem's name. You have to swear an oath in the name of Hashem, which is a very difficult thing. Chazal tell us, in fact, I remember reading in the Yalkut Me'am Lo'ez, that even if you are 100% right, you've got to be very careful when you swear an oath in the name of Hashem. It's a very difficult thing for a person to do such a thing. A Ben Torah, somebody who's a Yirat Shamayim, will be shaking if he has to make a Shavuah in the name of Hashem, even if he's 100% right. So now they asked him, you have to make this Shavuah D'Oraita, which is an oath which is from the Torah, mandated by the Torah. What did Rav Shlomo Zalman Porush say? He said, I cannot do this. I cannot make a Shavua in the name of Hashem. I've never done it before. I don't intend to do it now. He would rather pay the money that he'd paid once already than make a Shavua in the name of Hashem. But it's not just that. Okay, he could have paid the money, but his name, now people would look at him and say, he doesn't want to take an oath. He wants to pay the money. He never paid it in the first place. Maybe he thought he could get away with it. Now it comes to making a promise, an oath with Hashem's name. Now he doesn't want to do it. Maybe he did steal. That's, he would rather pay the money and have done with it. Yeah? Now, this must have been very, very difficult for the Av Beit Din, who was Rav Shmuel Salant. Because I'm sure he had no doubt that Rav Shlomo Zalman Porush was innocent. So the Av Beit Din, Rav Shmuel Salant, said no, because your name will be tarnished. People will not believe you that you're just paying it because you don't want to make an oath. They'll just say, he was trying to get away with it. No, still Rav Shlomo Zalman Porush refused. He said, I don't want to take the Shavua. But in the end, he actually said, okay, I need time to think about it. After convincing, he said, I'm going to go away for 3 days. He went away, contemplated what he was going to do, and he came back to the Beit Din after 3 days wearing a white kittel. He actually took the oath. Against his better judgment, he took the oath. But he still refused to, because the case went in his favor. So he refused to accept this money. What did he do? He wanted to pay the money back anyway. Listen to what he did. This shows you, we're talking about 110 gold coins. It was not like 50 quid or 100 pounds. He sold his house. He got 50 gold coins for his house. He borrowed the other 60, and this money that was in question, it was used to build the Beit HaKnesset, the shul called Beit Yaakov. Yeah, if you go now to Beis Yisrael, is an area in where the Mir Yeshiva is, Beis Yisrael. There's a shul there called Beis Yaakov. Now there's a postscript to this story, because Rav Feivel, who had forgotten about the 110 gold coins that had been paid to him, what was he doing? He went and he was cleaning in his house before Pesach. What did he do? He found the 110 gold coins that had been paid to him by Rav Shlomo Zalman Porush. Can you imagine such a thing? He'd taken this Rav Shlomo Zalman Porush to Beit Din for money that he felt he was owed, and he found the money now in his house. So what did he do? Straight away he ran to Rav Shlomo Zalman Porush and he asked Mechila, Mechila, Mechila. Of course, Rav Shlomo Zalman Porush gave him Mechila. And the postscript to the postscript of the story is that Rav Shlomo Zalman Porush had a grandson who was named after him, but he had a different surname. His name was Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Zecher Tzadik Kadosh Uvracha. is it any wonder that you have a gadol ador in your family because you show impeccable adherence to the truth, to public perception? He could have just turned around and said, yeah, I don't care what you think about me. I know that I'm telling the truth. No, he wanted to clear his name. You know, it reminds me, I'm going to tell this, I've told this story before, my auntie is here. I'm going to tell a true story. My auntie knows the story already, anyway. A true story about my uncle Daniel, who passed away 7-8 years ago now. Uncle Daniel. He passed away 7-8 years ago. That when he was in business, this I was told to me by my cousin David, who's my auntie's son. He told me at the Levaya for my uncle Daniel that my uncle Daniel, when he was in business, he did some business with a certain gentleman, and he owed some money to the gentleman, and he paid the gentleman back. Now, the gentleman subsequently passed away, and the widow of this gentleman came to my uncle Daniel, and she said to him, look, you owe me the money. Now, my uncle Daniel could have just turned and said, look, I've paid you the money. I paid your husband the money. But I don't know, maybe this was, I don't know how long after the fellow died, but my uncle Daniel, instead of just saying, look, I've paid the money, I've paid already, he took out the money and he paid it a second time. Yeah, rather than cause any anguish to a widow, he settled the invoice again. I don't know how much it was for. I can't imagine it was for 10p. It must have been something significant. But rather than cause pain to a widow, he would rather pay it again. I don't want to have that on my conscience. That is a tzaddik. We told a story about somebody who was a gadol ador, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, how his grandfather behaved in such a way. And then we told a story about my uncle Daniel, who his whole life he was striving to do the right thing. He was not the gadol ador, but in his life, whatever he did it for the right reason, and he made sure his name was untarnished. Yiratzon, all of us should really, really get this idea into our head that it doesn't matter if we're right or we're wrong. It's important that we leave behind a good name, because that will survive us. That will be our Yerusha, our inheritance that we leave on this world. It's our name, it's our family. But after 120 years, when we pass away, we want to say about us, he was a good man, and she was a good woman, and he was a Yireh Shamayim, and she was a Balat Chesed. They don't want to say, there's the one who ripped off his neighbor for whatever amount of money. Yeah? Even if it was completely false, we have to take pains to clear our name, because that's what we'll be left with. Yiratzon, all of us, after 120 years plus VAT, we should leave behind Tov Shem Yishem and Tov. We should leave behind a good name, and good children, and good grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and descendants, L'dorei Dorot, until we will all come back with our ancestors. Everyone together, just like Har Sinai. At this time we won't be dancing around the mountain. We'll be dancing in the Binyan Ariel, the Beit HaMikdash, with the Bayis Shlishi made happen in our times without any pain. Amen.